All our cases are pretty heart-wrenching, aren't they? But
That's
I
for
have
sure.
to say that this case of this American mother who was beaten up in Spain and her son was taken from her and brought back to UK, and there's a whole convoluted story around that. And then he was removed from her by Barnet Social Services, and she went through all the rigmaroles of trying to maintain contact with him, and contact was gradually phased out. And
I never saw him in prison.
she didn't see him once she was in prison. She was put in prison because she possibly was one of these vocal people who complained, you know. Why did she go to prison?
Why did she go to prison? Because she was caught to have abducted her own child, which is one of these causes. That's what they used in the Pedro case, but that's the charge. These are the false charges.
It was a case of mistaken identity. That was superficially. Anyway, to cut a long story short, this poor lady, having languished in Holloway jail for several months, and having been quite
2 years, Belinda.
Nearly 2 years,
all
right?
in all.
And she had arthritic knees before she went into prison, and then she had an operation while she was in prison, and the knees were operated on.
No.
And a day after returning from surgery in the local hospital, she was tipped out of her wheelchair by the staff of the prison onto the floor, so her knee, hardly healed from the operation, was damaged all over again. And then this obviously exacerbated the condition of the knees. She never really recovered the use of her legs after that. So she left the prison in a wheelchair. And because she was a US citizen, she was deported to America, and literally the image of her that stays strongest in my mind is of her coming off a Virgin Atlantic flight in the middle of the night and being left in the middle of Dulles Airport with her crutches in her wheelchair, with no money, no passport, no documents, no means of getting anywhere else at all, and she was supposed to find her way. This is the British Home Office did this to her. I, before she boarded the plane, rushed to Heathrow the previous morning to give her at least £200, or dollars, wasn't it? Dollars, I think. Well, anyway, dollars, pounds, I can't remember.
And
Anyway.
euros you gave her because...
Oh, euros as well. So that at least at the other end, because otherwise she would have had nothing. This is what the British Home Office had
That's
decided
called without
for her.
reception.
She would have had nothing. And I think they were a little bit shamed by this, because there was a bit of a reception committee at the checkout desk waiting for me to come with this money. And they were all very obsequious to me and how very kind of you and blah, 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 you know. So
This was in London.
this was at Heathrow
But it was
Airport.
all forgotten in Washington.
Anyway, she was basically dumped back in America.
She certainly was.
She was dumped. And in the meantime, of course, her son is now...
We don't
almost-
know whether he is already
Right.
adopted or
So
not,
now
but that was the purpose, obviously.
The wheels have been grinding. She's in America trying to pick up pieces of her life and to somehow find her way back to try and retrieve her son if she possibly can. But I mean, she's now against a great obstacle to try and get back. We, in the meantime, in UK, are trying to stop her son being adopted, basically, aren't we?
Well, we actually were advised by the senior legal advisor of the admin court that and by John Hemming, because she has not had the chance to exercise her rights of appeal due to the absolutely atrocious conditions in Holloway,
Yeah.
that she has the right to be heard. But to get the hearing going was completely impossible. The for security reasons, the admin court required an ISDN link, which isn't available.
It's a very antiquated technology.
Completely antiquated technology. Skype apparently wasn't possible because of security reasons. So we didn't show up to court, but magically another Mackenzie friend was there and noted down that we should have been served the order by email and that we are supposed to be awarded costs. Now we actually...
This is just extraordinary, because my role in this lady's case, you've done all the donkey work with the court.
All of the paperwork,
because she's good at paperwork. I've done the sort of pastoral care. I've tried to get this lady out of Holloway Prison twice on bail and gone through, you know, the motions of going to the court on that count.
You picked up her belongings and
Picked up her
stored
belongings,
them.
you know, all sorts of pastoral things. That's the extent of my...
Tea and sympathy.
Yeah,
You
whatever.
visited her.
And now we are being, you know, we're being stuck with this bill for
We are
court
supposed
costs.
to pay £2,000 each for having served and helped her, right?
Yes, for our pastoral services to this poor, you know, lonely, beleaguered lady, US citizen, washed up in UK and having her son taken from her. You know, I mean, honestly, how bad does it get?
John Hemming MP published the last, one of the orders, US mother to be deported while son kept here. That is the agenda. That is the purpose of the exercise. You
Yeah.
have to look at it
Well,
realistically, right?
Well, I don't know about agendas, but I mean, when you find such a pattern in all these cases and when you find things repeating themselves over and over again, you know, you start to feel, well, a pattern denotes some sort of organisation behind it, doesn't it?
Well, some planning at
Or
least,
plan, yeah.
some policy. But what is very significant for us as Mackenzie Friends now is that there have been serious legal cuts. So there will be more and more litigants in person, i.e. the need for Mackenzie Friends will be very, very important. The Legal Consumer Panel has already decided that it's worth discussing and debating whether Mackenzie Friends do or don't charge. But I'm afraid money is
There
not
are
the only
Mackenzie,
issue, is there?
Mackenzie Friends do charge sometimes,
Some do.
but we are voluntary, so that
We do our work pro bono, and then of course one wonders, why do we have to step in to do the work pro bono? Why is it necessary for pro bono volunteers to do what we do, i.e. highlight injustices, cruelties, horriblenesses that are too hard to imagine even.
it's true, but we do have now the possibility that we will get some help from the public because we've set up a foundation. haven't we?
Good.
Yes. So, because although it's voluntary, we sometimes have to run around the country, trains, buses, the odd plane here and there. Getting to court sometimes is expensive. You know, we need to be at a certain level. So we do have costs.
We do have
And
costs
we are
indeed.
asking the public just to help with our expenses. That's really,
Yeah.
you know, the most of it. But mostly we're doing this out of the really compassionate and, you know, humanitarian side of us. aren't we?
Well, if once you know about what's happening, you cannot not do anything, can you?
can't,
You
no.
just have to act. At least that's true for me, and I do as best as I can.
So on this day in December, when this poor lady was dumped in her wheelchair at Dulles Airport, and it was fearfully cold in Washington.
she ended
fearfully
up
cold.
living in the airport.
She lived there for several weeks, didn't she?
yeah.
I mean, it's just unbelievable.
She's now in Virginia.
We tried to do what we could for her, but
and then not to get what the UK is ever so famous for, fairness, fair trial. I mean, it's so sick, it's so hard, and then we are supposed to pay. However,
yes, anyway.
everybody says they're behind us, i.e. John Hemming is going to make a big difference. Ian Josephs, Christopher Booker, the only journalist who regularly reports about what he has coined and termed child snatching as the really embarrassing scandal. And I guess we just do what we can do.
We do what we can do. We live one day at a time, don't
Yeah, we keep doing.
we? We've got this £2,000 bill, and if we pay it submissively, then that sets a precedent for the court to then slap a bill on any Mackenzie friend who assists a litigant in person ever after. So,
Voluntarily.
voluntarily. We object to this. We're going to appeal against it because, quite frankly, it's completely out of order, because we had no idea that we were going, you know, there was no forward warning of the liability that we'd face if we challenged the appeal court.
What
on
is
behalf-
worst, remember, these costs are incurred by public servants, people who get their full-time salary, pension guaranteed.
So this is the Treasury solicitor
Yeah,
was
the
charging
barrister.
us, who are penniless nobodies, with £2,000 bills because we tried to help a litigant in the court.
I mean, a woman who has been treated so badly in prison, and since and afterwards, and then we are supposed to be paying for extra costs incurred by the poor barrister. Well, maybe you see some logic in it. I don't. Do you?
No. Well, thank you very much for listening. That's where we are now. Follow what we get up to next, and see you again.
At another place, but it was a great time to be at the South Bank.